Michael Savage Show contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Here is Michael Savage.
The war to end, put me in charge. I can end it in 30 days. Take no prisoners. You want to see America kick ass? Get a kick-ass leader, not a wimp liar. Give the enemy some skulls. My country was stolen from me by liars and thieves.
Spartans! Tonight, we dine in hell!
You want to win in Iraq? I can do it in 30 hours.
Sparta will burn to the ground! Blasphemy! This is madness! Madness. This is Sparta! This is Sparta!
Kick ass. Take the handcuffs off our men. Beat them over an anvil till there's nothing left. Crush them, break their hearts, destroy their homeland.
1,000 nations of the Persian Empire descend upon you. Our arrows will blot out the sun.
Then we will fight in the shade.
Beat them or get out of there! We have the most powerful weaponry in the world and we rarely use it.
This is where we fight! This is where they die! Before this battle is over, the world will know that few stood against many.
This music in our tanks, this music in our helicopters, this music playing in the background of our F-A-18s off the aircraft carriers, this music playing in the background of the 155-millimeter howitzers.
That's it. That's the story. That's the other side of defeat. This is the Savage Nation. Either we lose or we win. At this point, there's no question that we're going to stay there. The powers that be have insisted that we stay there. They are committed to this battle, and yet they're not fighting as though they are committed to this battle. In fact, George Bush gave an astonishing speech today where he said, I was shocked by it. He said, this plan has just started. Give me more time. It's frightening. I don't know what world the man is living in. Nobody believes a word he says. You can't say this has just started. It's a disaster. 21,000 men with the same rules of engagement, which is take a shot in the face before you pull a trigger. It means we lost. Play the chess game out. You need a new strategy. You need massive force, and then you get out of there after dividing the country into four. I mean, I'm not making this up out of whole cloth. This is an unmanageable area. The enemy knows that everything is in play here. The enemy knows that if they beat us here and they drive us out of Iraq, whether we should have been there or shouldn't have been there is irrelevant at this point. What is relevant is that the enemy is watching this closely. The enemy is throwing everything they have at us, meaning our poor men. The enemy understands that they drove the Soviet Union out of Afghanistan with the very same tactics. Remember that? The Mujahideen who we gave Stinger missiles to? Well, the Mujahideen are now fighting our men in Afghanistan. The Mujahideen have morphed into the Taliban. And in Iraq, we have more or less the same mentality. So everything is at stake. Now, either we win or we lose. There's no getting out of there with our tails between our legs. It won't work. The day America crumbles like that, we're going to break up. This country will break up like the ex-Soviet Union. You may say, what, is he crazy? Well, you can say whatever you want about me, but I'm not crazy. Did you ever think 20 years ago, would you have believed 20 years ago that that powerful Soviet Union would ever break up? No, you never would have believed that could have happened. But the reason the Soviet Union broke up was because they were broken from within. They had a long and costly war in Afghanistan, and they just could not sustain their Soviet empire. it collapsed. The fact of the matter is this country could collapse if this keeps up with this kind of on-again, off-again, on-again, off-again management. That is the problem. Now, for those of you who tuned in on Friday, which I know are many of you, legions of you, I concluded the show with a little pep talk to the nation. And apparently, many of you heard this pep talk, and you loved it. I also saw a couple of articles over the weekend that are now up on michaelsavage.com that I got to tell you made me think twice about certain things. First of all, the headline says, Michael Savage says, line U.S. border with tanks. Possible presidential candidates suggest dropping nukes on terrorist sanctuaries. First of all, let me tell you right now, and I'm going to get into this article from WorldNet Daily. You know, when I say drop nukes, I'm talking about tactical nuclear weapons used against the enemies in their stronghold after, if you'll read the whole story, after giving them 72 hours to evacuate their women and children. You got to read the whole article, and I'm going to read it for you. Now, tied into this article is an article right under that on my website. Marijuana, far more dangerous than thought, causes psychosis. Now, you say, well, what does one have to do with the other? Why is Michael Savage talking about cannabis? Because I have told you that liberals are a product of a psychotic upbringing, a communistic upbringing, combined with the deadly toxin of marijuana or dope. And I named them RDDBs, red diaper doper babies, way back in my book, The Savage Nation. RDDBs. Now, this article came out over the weekend. Came out today, actually, from The Independent in London. And listen to what they said. It said in 1997, this newspaper launched a campaign to decriminalize marijuana. If only we had known then what we can reveal today. And they go on to say that the number of youngsters who are treated for cannabis addiction under the age of 18 and for psychosis is leading to mental health problems that is almost uncontrollable. And they said they led the strong pro-cannabis march to London's Hyde Park. They forced the government to downgrade the legal status of marijuana to Class C because of their pressure. And now they say that the medical specialists are agreeing that they made a giant mistake. Now, what does the fact that the newspaper that launched the campaign to decriminalize marijuana is now saying they were wrong have to do with Iraq? The answer is many of our politicians and a good percentile, if not all of our liberals, are doped up. Now, whether they've changed from marijuana to antidepressants is very hard to say, or they're using a combination thereof of antidepressants on a regular basis, with an occasional joint, with an occasional drink. They're screwed up. Their minds are not functioning properly. They can't make decisions. But how many of our leaders are also on antidepressants? How many of them cannot take the heat in the kitchen? And instead of getting out, what they're doing is doping themselves up with a happy pill, thinking that they're still able to think clearly when in fact they're not thinking clearly. That's what really gets me worried, which is how many of our leaders are on either marijuana or alcohol on a regular basis or on Prozac-like compounds. I have said, and I will call for again, a drug test for everyone running for office. Everybody running for office, every sitting congressman and senator, everyone on the Supreme Court, and everyone in the cabinet, in the executive branch, should take a drug test on a regular basis so that we can know whether or not our leadership is doing the right thing and thinking clearly. After all, we the people have to take drug tests if we go to work for a corporation. You take a job as a cop, you go on a sports team, you have to take a drug test. And yet the people who are in charge of the nuclear football don't have to take a drug test? Liberals who are coming up with the craziest of statements don't have to take a drug test before they shoot their mouth off in front of the cameras? Okay, so these are all interconnected. You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm going to get into all of these things in more detail on the Savage Nation. But before I go into the shocking article on my website from WND, where they quote me as saying, line the U.S. border with tanks, and possible presidential candidates suggest dropping nukes on terrorist sanctuaries, I want you to judge for yourself whether these suggestions are as rash as they may appear on the face of it. McCain is obviously suffering from something terrible. McCain came out over the weekend and said that if he's president, he'll work on global warming. I mean, you got to take this guy away with a butterfly net. I mean, I'm sorry that he was imprisoned. It hurts me to think of what the Vietnamese did to him for 7 straight years. They tortured him mercilessly. For that, I will always respect this man. But the man is no longer qualified for the presidency with a statement like that. With so much at stake, with our army becoming depleted, with our troops fighting with one hand behind their back, with the enemy within growing more bold every day in this country, we need better than John McCain. And I'll be back to talk about that right here on the Savage Nation. Go ahead, please.
Savage.